phobia is based in anti-blackness. That is just a historical truth.
So the way in which the woke brain is constructed or reconstructed is that where we oftentimes find the prefrontal cortex, the executive functions of the brain, instead of having that part has been replaced with mental retardation, right? That's how the woke brain has been reconstituted for its vital functions of insanity. Because at this point, what the hell are we actually talking about? Now, this is something I heard about for maybe the last 3, almost 4 years at this point, right? I think it had its peak about a year back, and now it's having this slight increase again, and that is the fat acceptance movement. Now, they like to couple it with body positivity, but I believe at this point it's actually has very little to do with body positivity. Because if it was that, if it was genuinely body positivity, it would be the celebration of all bodies, right? Whether you had one arm or, you were stick skinny, slim thick, you know what I mean? It would be all bodies would be in that, right? You're built like the number 8 or you're built like the number 10. You would be included in that count. However, when it comes to this movement, quote unquote, it only makes space for the largest of our society. And it's incredible to see how the woke ideologues will galvanize, even if they're not a part of that necessary group, but they will look to quote unquote ally with those individuals in order to kind of rise up that victim ladder or that woke hierarchy. Because that's how it works, right? If you want to get high on that hierarchy, you either have to be the greatest victim or be associated and attached with the greatest victim, i.e. a quote unquote ally. And so here today we have a video of an ally who, if you looked at her first glance, you would think to yourself, oh, there's no reason this girl should be talking about these things, but in their world, this is how she gets her brownie points. So we're going to get into this video and then I'm going to give my 2 cents breaking this down. So what was the actual question? She got a question that said, you just list a bunch of assertions because you swallowed the CRT pill, dual repetition, fat phobia, seriously. So she says, yes, fat phobia is based in anti-blackness. That's her entire point. Fat phobia is racist, more specifically anti-black. So let's struggle through this together, and then we're going to find each other on the other side with a bit of relief.
Fat phobia is based in anti-blackness. That is just a historical truth. If you want to learn more about this, you can read Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia by Sabrina Strings. Historians widely agree that the phenomenon of coveting thinness and despising fatness gained widespread popularity in the United States. If you look at the work of the High Renaissance in the 16th century, you will see artists and philosophers both refer to plumpness in women as a positive attribute. However, during the 18th century, when race science became more popular, this is when evolutionary scientists began dividing races by physical attributes. And one attribute that was stereotyped and assigned to blackness was also fatness. Now, obviously, black bodies come in many shapes and sizes, but they liked this idea of assigning fatness to blackness because it was a sign of laziness. This also coincided with a time where Protestant identity was being closely aligned with the idea of abstaining. So thinness became a moral good. So this was another reason that evolutionary theorists wanted to associate fatness with blackness.
I promise y'all, folks, in at least a year to a year and a half, breathing will be considered as racist. Someone, somewhere, somehow is going to write a book on the whiteness of breathing and how breathing was created by the system of white supremacy in order to infiltrate black bodies and violate black bodies from within their own respiratory system. This shit right here is bonkers and it is out of control. Now, I'm not just gonna go off on sis because that's too easy. We could just sit here and dog her out all day. So let's go to the facts, okay? Let's go to the facts. Now, there is something she said which is real interesting, which is, well, there have been times in history or specific places in history where plumpness, as she calls it, mind you, that plumpness might have been a few dozen pounds overweight, maybe 2-3 dozen pounds overweight. So maybe a 40-50 pounder, right? Cool gut, fupa, you understand me? Built out, maybe evenly spread out, whatever, right? But nonetheless, it is still obesity. So why would that have been seen as attractive in, let's say, I believe she said in medieval times or Renaissance era? Because during a time in which people were destitute and poor and food was more scarce or nutrients were more scarce, to see somebody who could be overweight, like a lot of the kings were actually overweight, right? It's not saying that they were grossly overweight, but they were at some level overweight, many of them, right? Especially the ones who weren't necessarily war generals and things of that nature, you know, the Henrys and such and such. The reason why obesity would have been seen as a social symbol, which is what it was, is because it signaled that you were wealthy. It signaled that you had resources. That's what that was about. So it was almost like showing off to say, I'm able to feed my lady and she's eating good. That's what made it attractive. It was not biologically attractive. What is biologically attractive is a healthy and a fertile woman. You understand? Just like a man who is able to reproduce the best genetic materials, who is able to produce the best genetic materials to reproduce the healthiest child and to be able to protect that child, to be able to create resources or acquire resources for that child. That's the evolutionary biology for all people, black, white, and red all around. This is all people in every subsect. Now, what that looked like may have been different depending on where your band or tribe of people were located. But that does not change the fact that we were always looking and still are looking for healthiest. And so when we have this idea of quote unquote fat phobia come in, which mind you, it's quite strange how everything becomes a phobia, homophobia, Islamophobia. Well, I mean, the Islamophobia, that might be a phobia in a lot of places. I'm just going to say, right? No offense if that's your people, but in some cases, when you hear some of these stories, but when it comes to homophobia, most people are not afraid of the alphabet people. They might be turned off by it. They might feel some type of way, but they're not afraid of it. So when it comes to obesity, that's something that is unnatural to the human body. And so an individual will be turned off of that because it is unhealthy. That's why we have an inclination to lose the weight in the first place. But instead, we have now created a world in which we baby individuals into destructive behaviors, and we allow them to perpetuate those very same behaviors, leading them into worser off situations. The obese person becomes bigger and bigger because you are egging them on with this mental information. It is, and when I say retarded, I don't mean that as just like the insult. I mean it's remedial. It's the slowness of processing of information, or the inability to process information beyond propaganda. Like imagine if I wrote a book today, white breathing, and all I talked about was the racist construct of breathing, and that book is taken serious. Tens of thousands of people are now reading this work, and millions capture this idea that being that being able to breathe is racist. This is the exact equivalent of this argument. And as a matter of fact, the breathing one might be actually a little more grounded in reality. Maybe there's some real racist about that. But obesity being linked to racism, look, if people have a perception that a certain group of people are more obese than others, let's say Pacific Islanders, right, are much bigger per capita than, let's say, Japanese. The reason for that is because, technically speaking, yes, the Islanders are bigger, nonetheless, like little size just by birth. But if you were to go to BMI, they for sure have a larger discrepancy between how much fat they store versus Japanese folks based upon lifestyle. So if somebody makes a caricature of a larger Samoan, right, or larger Tongan or something like that, That is not an insult to the people. It is just showing you, on average, what an individual like this would look like. So if most people have an image of their head of somebody who is now black and obese, which wasn't always the case, mind you, this is a very new advent within the last 20 to 30 years where we see these obesity epidemics, right? If you were to go back in the 80s, 70s, 60s, and you saw black women 50s, 40s, the most in shape. Granted, we also had healthier values overall. We had community, we had families, a dad, a mom, children in the household together with two parents, right? Before the Democratic Party came in and through their welfare system and made people reliant upon the welfare system. Before that, you would see people in very good shape, taking care of themselves, even in the midst of Jim Crow laws. So to call this racism, it's the opposite. It's the fact that you're so damn privileged that you can eat that damn much. The fact that you can eat so damn much is, look, I was born in Zimbabwe and left when I was 10 years old. Zimbabwe has 80% unemployment. It is a place that has been in abject poverty for, as long as I remember. If you are obese in a third world country, you are likely wealthy. In America, if you're obese, you're more likely to be somebody in the poorer class. So you live in a country where you're so well off that you can be poor and obese. That's a privilege. The fact that you can be obese means that you are consuming a surplus of food, and we could talk food deserts and food insecurity all day long. All this yabba yabba, blame it on somebody else. Personal decisions between your hand and your mouth. That decision right here is leading to this right here. And it's as simple as that. So, yeah, she tried. Lord knows she tried. Black bodies. Ain't that something, y'all? That's how far we've gone. Oh, man, my job is too fun. It is too fun. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Until the next time. Peace.
I used to be afraid of the dark, place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light.